X Factor, Alonso, I'll get Blues back on trophy trail. Boss Xabi Blues vow. He promised to bring trophies back to Stamford Bridge. Okay, right. So Xabi Alonso was announced as Chelsea's new manager. So not a head coach.
Well, that's the most important thing, being called a manager, not a head coach.
And does that mean, Ray, that we are going to finally see a Chelsea manager have a little bit of control? Because we haven't seen that under this ownership.
No, not at all. And that's what the owners have got to do. They've got to they make their big decision. Alonso's a big signing for Chelsea. I think he'd be very good. But let him get on with it himself. You know, you can't get involved. You can't be saying, "Oh, I will do this, do that, do this." You're the manager. That's why you're paid lots of money to be a manager, not to do what they want you to do. If you know what I mean, you've got to make big decisions as managers.
I mean, you obviously at Arsenal, Arsene Wenger was. How much control did he have? Did he have total control? And could you see Alonso having that amount of control?
I think David Dean was very important at that period under Wenger. But Wenger always, David Dean, they had a really good relationship together, Jeff, where Wenger would probably make the final decision, but David Dean would put options in front of him and say, well, about this, about that, about this. Obviously, contracts was probably down to David Dean a little bit more than Wenger, but Wenger was always... The good thing about Arsene, he was always on your side, trying to help you out as a player. Yeah. And the players knew that. So they want to try a little bit harder for him, if you know what I mean. You try anyway for the shirt. You play for the shirt, but if the manager's trying to help you out as well along the way, you run around a little bit more for him.
But what makes me interested here, Olivia, and I've got a lot of time for Xabi Alonso, and his win percentage at Bayer Leverkusen Real is absolutely
brilliant.
Outstanding. When he talks about bringing silverware, what sort of silverware is he thinking about then?
I think... Listen, Chelsea get to finals,
they may not be in Europe next season.
No, and I'm sort of stuck between the results yesterday actually went for Chelsea, and if they hadn't messed it up so badly over the last 6 or 7 weeks, there's still a chance that Chelsea finish 8th and get Conference League. There is still a small chance they could finish in the Europa League, but I don't want Conference League. I don't think that competition is made for teams like Chelsea because of what happened last time. Played our kids up until the semi-finals and then played our good players and won pretty comfortably. I don't know whether a season out of Europe is quite good for Xabi Alonso. And a game a week may just suit this team. But when you look at this Chelsea squad, Ray... Obviously, it starts on July the 1st. What do you think the first priority should be for Xabi Alonso? When you look at that Chelsea squad, and in terms of the FA Cup final, a game you need to win against City, bringing on players, no disrespect, but bringing on the likes of Alejandro Garnacho and Liam Delap.
That's pretty disrespectful.
Am I right, Jeff?
I'm not saying.
It's not disrespectful, but
you're a Chelsea fan.
When I think of Chelsea...
they've recruited pretty badly.
Do you know what I mean? That's my point, is that City, and I know City are very good at recruitment, right? They're bringing on Rayan Cherki. They could bring in Phil Foden off the bench. And I just think this squad planning over the last 4 or 5 years just hasn't been at the standard that we're used to at Chelsea.
But it's all hopeless.
They've gone down that road.
Hopeless.
They've gone down that road where they want youngsters and try and develop them and 8-year contracts and all that sort of stuff. And you've got to have a bit of experience in there as well. I know that you can argue they've got a little bit, but
not enough.
Defensively, what would you look at that?
I think. Do you know what? Levi Colwill has impressed me so much. Coming back after an ACL injury and playing like he hasn't even missed a game was remarkable. And I was really impressed with Jarell Hatto. And I know Alonso sometimes likes to play a 3 at the back, which I do think Chelsea have the players for. However, like you say, I think I'd be happy with Jarell Hatto and Levi Colwill, but you need a very, very good centre back in the middle of them or next to them.
Thomas Tuchel was obviously there. He was at the final. So I was going to ask that anyway. So, Levi Colwill, is this too soon for him to be in the England? Because you're right, he makes a massive difference to Chelsea. 2.5 games back.
It's difficult because I look at England's centre-back options and it depends how many you want to take, right? So Gahey, Maguire, Konsa are definitely the 3 you're going to take probably when you look at them. Yeah. Do you take John Stones? Do you take Levi Colwill?
How can you take John Stones with his injury record and he didn't get off the bench in that final?
So
he's been a terrific player.
Who would you take as the...
Dan Burn is probably in the frame at the moment.
Would you take Levi Colwill as a 5th, given how much he's settled in?
You can't take 5 central defenders.
I think he's taking a gamble. He's only just come back in. He looked like against Liverpool. I thought he played really well against Liverpool. And he looked like he was going to come off then, didn't it?
Yeah, he did have a little moment.
He had a little moment where you think, oh no, he ain't injured his knee again or something like that. But then he run it off sort of thing. But whether it's a little bit too soon for him. He'll be looking at next season. He wants a good pre-season. That's what Colwell needs. And then he can kick on next year, and then he'd certainly be involved in England going forward. Yeah. Definitely.
I think Cole Palmer did enough in front of the England manager.
God, I'll tell you what, that number 10 position, I don't know. I mean, look, he's a top-class player. There's no doubt about that. But whether other players are in front of him, I think they are. I think Morgan Rogers and people like that be in front, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they will.
Bellingham, maybe.
Yeah, Bellingham will be. Morgan Rogers will be. Morgan Gibbs-White, based off of the season.
Gibbs-White has been superb.
Yeah, he has. But it's how many 10s does Thomas Tuchel take? And if there is space for one more, do you risk it with Cole Palmer? Because it is a risk, the way he's playing right now.
Now, there's a familiar face taking over at Chelsea.
Chelsea, in the last few minutes, have confirmed Xabi Alonso as their new manager. The Spaniard will begin his role on July the 1st. He's signed a 4-year contract.
I think he's one of the next up-and-coming superstar managers, and I think he would send a real statement of intent. You have to give him the keys and go, what do you need for us to be successful again?
We're running out of options now in terms of who actually wants to come to the club. So, yeah, we're all pinning our hopes on that one.
What he really needs to be is backed. Maresca was clearly infuriated by the fact that he didn't. Liam Rosenior was never even close to being that, obviously.
I think this might work out all right, and I think Blue and Co, or whatever they call themselves, are about to hand over some power.
Yeah, Xabi Alonso, Chelsea's new manager. But he is just that. He is a manager rather than the head coach. Joining us for more is talkSPORT's chief football correspondent, Alex Crook. Morning, Crookie.
How you doing, Alex?
Morning, boys. All good?
Good. So, look, 4-year deal for Xabi Alonso as a manager. Wanted to be the manager because he wants more control. How much control do you think he'll have?
Well, certainly more than his predecessors, Liam Rosenior in particular. And obviously, as you mentioned there, Enzo Maresca was very frustrated by the end of his tenure because he had a doctor sat on the bench telling him exactly how many minutes his players could play. I don't see that being repeated under Xabi Alonso. And you're right to highlight the fact that he has been given the title of manager as opposed to head coach. That suggests that the owners are willing to hand over more control, have learned from their mistakes. In fact, speaking to sources at Stamford Bridge, they know this season has been a poor one. They said after they got rid of Liam Rosenior so quickly, having appointed him, that they would do a bit of soul searching. There would be a period of reflection. And they're describing this to me as the next stage in Chelsea's evolution by, instead of appointing a rookie manager like Liam, who was going to learn on the job, who was probably always going to struggle to command the respect of what is quite a difficult dressing room to control, they've now decided to hire someone who's been there, got the T-shirt, not just as a player, but as a manager as well, with that incredible invincible season at Bayer Leverkusen. Even Alonso's record at Real Madrid is not terrible, So I think instantly he'll command the respect of that dressing room because of what he does as a player, because of what he's already achieved in management. They're going to task him with building a culture befitting of a club like Chelsea. And it was quite clear in the statement when they announced him yesterday, they want to be challenging for the top honours, and they see this as the first step in that direction. How much control will he have? Well, certainly he's going to have a bigger input in transfer decisions than the likes of Rosenior and Maresca.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. The model of Chelsea, will they change that as well? Because it doesn't seem to be working, what they're trying to achieve at the moment. And Alonso might have a little bit more of an input into transfers and who they need, because look, you don't know what sort of system he's going to play. We play three at the back or what, and he's got to get players to suit them positions, isn't he? So I think there's going to be a hell of a clear out, don't you think, Alex?
Yeah, he does tend to be more of a back three manager.
Mm.
That was certainly what his success at Leverkusen was built upon. But again, I'm being told that he is a flexible coach. He won't necessarily be married to that system in the same way Ruben Amorim was, for example, at Manchester United, because actually it's a difficult system to implement in the Premier League. It's only Chelsea who've gone and won the title in the Premier League era with that back three under Antonio Conte. But there will be a clear out, Ray. I think that's pretty evident. Liam Delap came off the bench, missed a good chance at the FA Cup final at the weekend. I think that's a gamble that hasn't quite worked out. So they're open to offers for him. We've already reported they're open to offers for Alejandro Garnacho. Jamie Gittins, again, seemed a strange signing at the time. I'm not sure he's the type of player that can really kick them onto the top level. So I would expect him to go. Wesley Fofana potentially. So I think there's going to be a big overhaul of players in this window. In terms of recruitment and players coming in, I think it'll be a subtle tweak as opposed to completely tearing up the rule book. They will still put the emphasis on buying young players with sell-on potential, but I think they'll also bring in that little bit of experience. Enzo Maresca certainly this time a year ago was pushing for a more experienced centre-back to come in and play alongside Levi Colwill. Didn't get his wish. I think that will be a priority under Xabi Alonso to try and bring in that bit of nous, that bit of know-how to help these obviously talented young players.
Crookie, just briefly, mate. Xabi Alonso joining Chelsea, probably the one piece of good news over the last few days for Arne Slot. After the defeat against Aston Villa, then Mo Salah's outburst. But how are Liverpool fans going to be feeling about this? Those who want Slot out, surely they would have been looking at Alonso as a logical replacement.
Oh, absolutely. That is the only name in town in the red half of Merseyside. As I understand it, there weren't any serious conversations between Liverpool and Alonso about him taking that job. I think actually his preference was to go to London as opposed to returning to the Northwest. So maybe it was never really on the table from his point of view. Just on Arne Slot, I thought that the statement from Mo Salah was bordering on disgraceful, really. It wasn't even subtle, was it? He's thrown his manager under not one, but 10 or 12 double-decker buses. But I think this is a player, yes, he's been a brilliant servant for Liverpool, probably their greatest player of the Premier League era, but he hasn't been this season. And I think before you start aiming shots at the manager, you need to look at your own performance and work out why you've dropped off so badly. But it is going to be fascinating to see what Arne Slot does here, because I think he's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. Most managers, I think, would say to Mo Salah, well, you're not playing last day of the season. You're not going to get that Anfield send-off. If he does that, he's going to completely alienate any of those Liverpool fans who are still backing him.
Yeah, he's got to play him.